In this video, I'm gonna share the 7 new upgrades to the D1 Pro. I'll demo this 20-watt laser head with air assist. We'll see just how deep it can cut through walnut in one pass. And I also did some cuts on the world's most expensive wood, pine, from the big box store. What's new with the D1 Pro? Well, first, the name. As far as I can tell, there will be no more D1. When the D1 Pro first came out, there was a moment where you could get both the D1 and the D1 Pro on xTool's website, but now you can only get the D1 Pro. But it seems like moving forward, the D1 Pro is now the D1 standard. Obviously, they've added a second color. This is like a red and gold Iron Man motif. I personally like the gray because my favorite color is black. I have a therapist, I'm working on it. The best new thing about the D1 Pro is they've added limit switches to this thing. I did a review of the D1 a few months ago, and my #1 complaint was that it doesn't have limit switches. Why you would want limit switches is, say you have your laser positioned here, and then you move it, and then you tell it to move this way in the computer. Well, it has no real understanding of where it is in space sometimes. And I've had times where this thing has crashed in or even pulled on the cable, and that can destroy your machine if you're not careful. Also, imagine thinking it's in one position when it's in another and you have material there, you fire the laser and it's not in position at all because of a mix-up. So limit switches, while you don't necessarily need them, they're a nice kind of safety net to have. They could have done cheap limit switches that have like the little spring metal that breaks after 100 uses. They did contactless limit switches. I don't even know how they work, like some sort of magic. They're like proximity, so as soon as they get close enough to each other, some sensors go off apparently, and they stop. It's brilliant, and it means there's gonna be less mechanical parts to touch that need to be replaced. But the biggest reason why I love the limit switches is you can now auto home your machine, or home your machine through Lightburn. I haven't been able to do it in xTool software, but if you use Lightburn, you can home your machine. And basically why you'd want to do that is, say in your side hustle or your small business, you need to batch produce a bunch of coasters, for example. You could set up a jig and you could get all of your alignments set once and then batch produce, and every time you reset, you go to home, it moves out of the way, it comes back, and you could efficiently work through a ton of stuff. The old machine, you really couldn't do that, or you had to do a bunch of things to get close to the accuracy. So I love that they've upgraded this by just adding them. Huge win. They've added flame detection and a flame sensor in this unit. It's so sensitive that I've actually had to turn it to low, and I've considered to even turn it off, because when I've done some tests on some materials that flame easier, like basswood, this 20-watt unit is so powerful. I've done 2 speed tests that have failed halfway through because this thing just lights the stuff on fire. And so it does its job in protecting you and your house. So love that, but it can be a little annoying. You just need to babysit it, and you can change those settings. I'm kind of surprised that that's not mandated by law to be on every machine, because like this thing could burn your house down if you left it unattended. It could catch something on fire if conditions are right. This could cause a lot of damage. So I like that they included that sensor and that function, although it is kind of annoying when you're running at full power on wood that's easily combustible, but maybe that's my fault and not the machine. There's now 3 head options. One of the cool things about this is you can buy the frame and then you can swap out these heads. This is what the 10-watt looks like. This is the 20-watt, and you can get a 5-watt. You can go to xTool's website and look at why you would want each different one. I'll give you my take on it. They say that the 5-watt is for people who are gonna do fine laser engraving, but really not need to cut anything, and that would make sense. But I did some fine engraving of my own. I'll show you some close-ups with the 20-watt, and I was blown away. I wonder if our eyes can actually see the difference between these laser spots, between the 5 and the 20. The engraving that I've done that's been super intricate, I've gotten awesome results with the 20-watt. So I think if you are seriously looking at a laser, for me, the baseline would be 10 watts. I wouldn't even consider the 5-watt. because I think it's about $100 more. You can just get double the power with a 10. And I don't know why, if you're gonna spend the money on a laser, why you wouldn't just spend an extra $100 to get the 10 watt. I think that makes sense. And the 20 watt is just twice as powerful. I think the jump is $400 to $500 more, so it's quite a bit up there, but you are getting twice the power of a laser head. So they've changed the knob. On the regular D1, there's just a little round knob you turn. On the Pro, there's more of a lever so you can get more leverage. But on the 20 watt, they've added a second micro adjust. You set the focus of the laser using the integrated kickstand. And then if you need to cut, you can lower the head even further based on your measurement of the wood and everything. So that's pretty nice. You get a little bit more accuracy with the Pro. They've also changed the design of what's this light shield. On the D1, it's just a square. And what happens, I'll show you some close-ups of this. What happens with the regular D1 is a lot of like pollution gets built up because debris isn't directed anywhere. But with the Pro, they've added kind of an angled piece to direct the airflow, and it seems to be working. And I've also noticed that it gets less smoky around the laser because it's funneling the air and the smoke in a certain direction. So that's a nice improvement to help with the functionality. There seems to be a new style of motherboard. The motherboards look similar, but they're not identical. Who knows, but that's different. And xTool just updated their software. With the D1, you could get a free software called LaserBox, which it worked, but it was a lot like using Windows Movie Maker or Microsoft Paint. It did the job sorta, but was really clunky. And you would wanna use Lightburn if you're gonna get serious in this anyway. With the Pro, they've released a new software called Creative Space, and it's a lot better. It's still in beta. There's some things that I have not been able to do. Framing is when you do like a preview of your thing before you turn the laser on. And in Creative Space, when I first got the machine, it wouldn't do that function. It would just error. In Lightburn, it would. So I knew it was the machine's fault. It was the software. And in the process of doing this video, they put out an update, and lo and behold, framing now works. So their new Creative Space software is free, and it's still in beta development, and I would assume that all those bugs are getting worked out. But it's a much better experience. I still have some problems with it. I don't like how they do text, and it's a little clunky, not as intuitive as I think it should be. But the D1 Pro works great with Lightburn, and if you're gonna spend the money investing in something like this, you should spend the $60 or $100 in buying Lightburn and using it, because it's just a better program. I've seen places where people claim that the D1 Pro is twice as fast as the D1. The speed specs on this are crazy fast. I've not really done a whole lot of testing on that in comparison, but what I would say is I like that it's faster, but I wouldn't run it at its peak, because you're going to run the risk of putting more wear on your materials and the machine than needed, which is going to eventually require more maintenance down the line. So, but I like that it's faster. I'm more or less thinking of what does the end result look like, not how long does it take. Some people have claimed that this 20 watt head can cut through 3/4 of an inch of material in one pass. 3/4 of an inch. For everyone else in the world that got a proper education and learned a far superior measurement system, 19 millimeters. And this first test is a 19 millimeter or 3/4 inch stock of like 1x4 or a piece of a 1x6 from the big box store. And you can see here the engraving with and without air assist. And if you slow the speed down to 50% with power at 40%, you can just see how deep this will engrave pine. I also did some cuts, and you can see on the side here, 1 pass does what 2 passes does, what 3 and 4 passes. If I set it to 100% power, 1% speed, 1 pass, I was able to cut through 3/4 of an inch, 19 millimeters of pine. Now it charred pretty heavily, and that's with air assist. The top's pretty clean, but there's a lot of charring. I found that if I sped it up just a little bit and added a second pass, I actually got a better result. And so while you can cut through this material 100% power at the slowest speed in one pass, if you're gonna do that, I think you get better results going faster and doing multiple speeds so that you're not burning as much in one spot and catching fire. I also did a bunch of speed tests using Brandon from the Make or Break Shop's pattern that he made for light burn. It's really cool to see what is all possible with all these combinations. Did a similar test with walnut just to see how deep I could get walnut, and basically you can see with and without air assist that air assist does matter. It actually does work. And I got about halfway through this 1.5 inch piece of walnut with the slowest speed at 100% power with 2 pass. If I wanted, I could break that off, but honestly, no one's ever going to use a laser to cut through walnut this thick. But it's pretty cool to see that if you were going to cut things at 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, you could totally do it cleanly with air assist with a hardwood like walnut. I did this in light burn to test engraving on walnut, and as you can see, 100% power, 40 millimeters a second, no air assist, and with air assist. And you can see the slight differences there, but this is burning so hot to get through this hardwood, you're gonna get some charring no matter what. I think if I turned the power down and went faster, I would not get as much charring. I did a cut test to see how deep it would cut with those settings, and I got about 2 millimeters down into the walnut using these settings. Obviously you could go deeper if you go to the slowest, but that's pretty impressive given how hard walnut is. So you can see similar results on my pine test, and in the cut, I was able to go 3 millimeters using those tests. Again, if I were to go to the slowest speed, I would be able to cut through that, no problem. I was curious to see how deep these letters were engraving, and you can see with air assist and without air assist how the cut really does make a big difference. This is a 1x6 from the big box store, which is not 1 inch, it's 3/4 of an inch, which we've established is 19 millimeters. And I was able to cut through what I thought would be a large push stick for my table saw. Turned out to be more of a child's toy. This D1 Pro with the 20-watt head cut this out. Really impressive. Now, it took some time. It filled my garage with smoke. My clothes smelled for a day or two. There is some charring. It's not the greatest quality, but it does it. Obviously a CNC would be better. I made a wooden mallet out of walnut with my CNC and then used the laser to engrave on it. I wondered if I could cut out my mallet pieces with this laser. And so I did on that scrap of 1x6. You can see it does cut them out, but there is significant charring. I was able to make this mallet and all the pieces completely with this laser. I also have a CNC and I can get a much better cut faster with less finishing with the CNC. So yes, it can cut thick stuff like this, but then it requires like cutting things down, sanding, and it's okay, but I think you'd be better off using a CNC to do thick cutouts. Now for templates, cutting out, 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch material for like template routing would be perfect. But for this thicker stuff, the laser is just focused for so long on this sappy wood and it just catches on fire. I was impressed and disappointed at the same time with this. This laser is great, but it's not all rainbows and sunshine. I found 5 things that I don't like about this laser, and you should know about them. If you want to see that video, click right here.